It is the most alive and the most emotional form to tell stories. Basically, you only observe people with sound and with image. You don't do interviews.
Observational documentary. The responsibility of the person who does the camera, whoever that is very, very high. Because there is, in the course of doing the documentary, there is no possibility for a director to direct, because we are observing. So it's a special way that one has to work together as cameraman, maybe soundman and director, which is different to all the other situations where we can direct, or where we can ask people to come in again and sit down and do it again, please.
It's purely observational. This doesn't mean you just go and film people, no. On the contrary, it's the form that needs most patience and most preparation, most thinking. Directors have to learn to trust images. While filming, you never interrupt the team, but your eyes are where their eyes cannot be. Because maybe you see something in another angle which is more important. And only then do you interrupt. And never, never, never discuss what you're doing in front of your protagonist. Now, because filming the observational way is very different from other ways of filming, it also needs special editing. Editors have to be much better when they are editing observational documentary. Why? Because they very often cannot follow the classical language of editing. They have to go with movement, they have to go with rhythm.
Please take the time to look at the footage, because you have to know the footage before you start to edit. Even if the director tells you, I was there, I can tell you what you can take, what you have. Watch the footage first. It's very, very important.
And very often she discovers things in the material which I don't see.
Because if you go into the cinema and you sit in the film, in the audience, you forget time, you sit in there, you dive into a story. This is the strength of cinema and the strength of film. That's why you, as an audience, you think you are there, in a way. Of course, you know you're not there, but you think you are in a situation and you live with your actors. You cry, you laugh, you are in a state of shock. All these emotions happen because you experience like if you would be yourself in this situation. That's the power of this medium. When we make a film, we simulate perception, our daily life perception. It's a simulation of perception. So if we know that what we do with a camera and with film is a simulation of our daily experience as human beings walking around in the world, then we have to know what are the basics that we need to be able to walk around and to live in this world. You want to capture your audience, that they stay and watch your film. And this is a technique, how you do this. You have to know the technique, the rules of the 3Ws. The first thing that we always need in our life is we have to know where we are. So the first W actually stands for where. And the second W stands for who. Because if I meet people, I constantly have encounters with human beings. I have to see them, I have to see their faces, I have to see their eyes. And of course, logically, the third important thing is the what. What is happening around me? What is the person doing that I'm seeing? I have to anticipate what is happening around me. So if this is so important for our daily life, we can easily say that when we are making a film, it is Very, very important that we transport this information. I transport these three informations. The audience is 100% informed. These are actually would be three shots, right? Situation of the room, a face, and somebody who's writing. Three single shots. Of course, the order, in which order we give this information, that makes the film interesting. Because if we do it very simple, situation, a room, a head, and the hand that writes, we give all the information, but it's not very interesting.
Exercise is to portray the village in not more than 5 shots.
Most of the time I need at least, absolute minimum, 3 shots to participate the situation. I could make a portrait of this village in 3 shots. Wouldn't be a very elaborate portrait, but it would be possible, right? Make them in the order that you would edit them, right? And do it in that order, so we can just look at it without editing them.
If, however, you get across a better shot later, then take it and tell us this will be our first shot. This, we have to allow this.
So a clear focus is very important to do this.
Mm-hmm. Try really to be very, very clear on the focus. We always give you a focus with these exercises, or you choose the focus yourself. But be focused.
This does not only, of course, not only apply if we have people. Normally, many times we have people that are the main focus. But it could be that we say our main focus is the village and not the people. Of course, there are people in the village, but the people are secondary. We want to show a village. Our focus could be it's a beautiful, busy village. Then I have to go and find the appropriate shots that transport this message. And the village is the focus and not the people. I did shorten it now. But of course the first shot, if you are searching with the camera, it's a bit the searching shot with the camera. It's better to search before you pull the trigger. Right? You can search and find your image. And because Gabi at the editing table, she's very grateful if she doesn't have to look all the search, if she has an image. And of course, if you are following some action, that's something that you can't predict, right? Then of course your camera is very dynamic. But if you just show a landscape or a village from above, you can take all the time in the world to make your image. The camera in my hand, I make a decision, and I can look around and try out for a long time. But at one point I have to make a decision, and then I make the frame, and then I press the button. Here I have so many things to see, right? The birds are just a tiny little part of the image. If you imagine this bird, very big, which is very hard to follow. It needs lots of practice. But then it's a bird, and the background and everything else doesn't matter. If there are 2 or 3 birds and lots of background, then it's just I am searching around with my eyes in your picture, and I can't orientate myself, right? So following birds, they have to be really close. Following whatever, a car on the street, then it's the car on the street, close. And that's one thing that is very important, and I see it all the time. Close-ups, images of things close are very, very important. Never forget them.
If you focus on the birds, if you focus on this beautiful landscape, but then afterwards you want to show a busy village, sometimes that might not work together because you look at the picture and you're expecting something else afterwards.
let's look at this passage here of this woman. Actually really a very, very nice situation. Very graceful movements, a nice situation. Poor Gabi probably, as she said, she probably wouldn't. She would sit on the editing table and say, what a pity I can't really use. Just look at this one shot and think of the 3 W's. I mean, we could demonstrate it on this shot. All I need is a shot that establishes this woman like this, maybe. Then I could need a second shot of her hands, close these things that she's, and maybe her face. Right? But if I have nothing of this, just one shot that is very not precise, the camera doesn't really know what he wants to do, and we feel that. Not consciously, but we feel that the camera doesn't really know what, it's nice, but I don't really know what to do. And then it's a shame. Because we can't, as I said, we can't really use it. I saw the beginning of a very interesting and very touching film. That's what I saw. I didn't see the location doesn't make any difference to me really. It's the people. It's this old man, the sick man with his young daughter, which immediately grabs me, but it has nothing to do with the words, because it could be anywhere. The figures are so strong, and the situation is so strong, that I want to see more. Right? It would be a great beginning of a wonderful story. Every camera movement, whatever you do with your camera, must have a reason. The camera movement tells your audience, it's like turning their heads, right? You tell them, look from right to left. And there must be a reason for that. If you turn your audience's head and there is no reason, it's just turning, and there is no information, then your audience gets irritated. This is a camera movement I can understand. It's more or less logic, because I see a landscape and somebody turns my head and tells me, look, there is a house and somebody probably lives there. Right? So we could easily now go into this house, meet these women, and then we would have a lot of flow. But what you can do when you film and you're not quite sure which way you want to do it in the end, you just do both ways, right? And then at the editing table you take either this way or the other way.
No observational film will work if the protagonists don't trust you. I don't think any of the men's crews could have shot that scene.
Normally we look at things neutral, right? We watch people, how they walk around and behave, and then suddenly here we go inside the head of the woman, and we see what she sees. It's a subjective view of a situation. And here, of course, it's a bit, it's a little gag, because it's upside down, because she's looking upside down. But if you see feature films, it happens very often that you see somebody who looks somewhere, and then you see what he sees, right? Yeah. So that's what we call the subjective camera in the feature film. That's the classic subjective camera, which is no longer an objective view of a situation, but a subjective view through the eyes of somebody.
You don't use it so often in this type of documentary we were talking about, but it's a very good means to train emotions. So we will all ask you to do just one shot of subjective camera, which will also be a shot, a moving shot. At the same time, we see how you move camera. At the same time, it's also a good example where director and camera person have to get together before and find the common focus. And you have to choose the focus and the emotion yourself, and you have to choose who you are. For example, you two go together in your room as a team, and you decide together who you are, who looks at this room. And does this person say, what an untidy room? Why didn't they make my room? Or you are a bride, and you will pass your first night with your husband in this room, and you look at it through the eyes of this bride. You decide who you are, what emotion you have when you see this.
We want to have this shot. It's one shot, right? You just turn on the camera, do the shot, and switch it off again. And you can practice it with your camera. You discuss it together with your director. Then you practice without recording, and then you might discuss it again. If you have it, you can stage it. You can really, think how you want to do it, and then you do it. You are a moving camera, right? You're like a person walking around. So you have your camera, you probably show the room, like if I would come in here, I would show the room like this. Maybe I look over there, then I come back here, then I move over, look at the faces. Maybe I go over here, look at the notes of Marian, I look up again, I look at the door, maybe I go out again, I don't know. So that it's like a person moving around, looking at things, having an impression of a room.
Don't forget the emotion.
Short sequences with the moving camera, showing people, showing what they do, walking with them, with your camera with them, and try it out. Because that is what you will need when you do your exercises, when you do your films actually.
А может, это не наш ник? А может, он там? А может, он сгорел? А Кланька где? А? Кланька? Кланька! Чего?
One.
we know where we are, we see who it is, more or less. We know what he does. And then what happens, just look at what happens in the end if we talk about these things as passive camera movement. If there's a movement that takes the camera here, the camera decides by himself, but there is a clue. There is a reason why he does that. What is the reason for the camera to pan over to the right-hand side?
Because character looks outside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, back to observational documentary. We were talking about the pure form, which is only observing actions of people. The very pure form, the fundamentalists don't even put music. So whatever we tell you the pure form, but we also tell you that there are other possibilities, because we are no fundamentalists. You get to know your protagonists. You build up trust with them. Some of them are very good actors of themselves. Use it, because you can't change it anyway. If you have the chance to work a long time with them, they will forget you with the time. But never tell them what to do.
From the camera perspective, there is one thing that is very important. I have to know my camera inside out. If I'm observed with my camera, I have no chance to do observational documentary. That's the first thing. The second thing is I have to be an extremely good in the team with my director. We have to have the same focus. There is no way that there can be, tension between us, things like that. That is very bad for the situation. And the third thing is we have to disappear so that our protagonists act as natural as possible. That's the secret. If I have these three elements, I have a good chance to make a good observational documentary.
हामी जान साथ चाहिँ हामीले क्यामेरा अगाडि राखेर खिच्न सुरु गरिदिन्थ्यो अहिले क्यामेरा चाहिँ पछि झिक्दैन हामी अहिले कुरा गर्छौँ अनि अलिक फ्रेन्डसिप भएपछि बल्ल उसँग अलिकति कुरा मिलेपछि बल्ल हामी खिच्न सक्छौँ.
Also needs a lot of trust between cameraman and director, because you always make mistakes. It's never 100% perfect, but it is the crown discipline.
Preparation is very, very important. What as a cameraman, I have to know exactly what we are looking for. We have to communicate in a way before that we are doing the same film. Because it happens sometimes that the director and the cameraman, they make two different films, and then we go to the editing, and Gabi is there, and she's surprised.
And she makes a third film.
That could happen too, exactly. And another important thing to me is, and I know that from my own experience, that as a cameraman you sometimes get carried away by certain things, by images, and you tend to lose. There's a danger that you lose your focus. It could be that something happens during filming that attracts me visually. I go away and I start doing pictures of him, and actually the focus of what I should be doing would be here. And that is the moment where it is very important during filming that the director can pull me back onto the right tracks. Right? Because it's the second pair of eyes that is looking at the situation with maybe a bit of a different perspective than just the camera perspective, and that is where the teamwork on the set starts.
If Stefan is doing an action and I'm filming it, and then I see, oh, Marianne is doing an action too. In general, finish the action of Stefan, because if you start there and you don't finish and you jump over there, for me in the editing room it's very difficult because I don't have his action full and I don't have her action full.
That's why I call the camera work on observational documentary is it's the crown discipline of the camera work, because you are making decisions every split second. Like the example that Gabi says, if I'm here, I look around and I look to someone who is speaking, I look to you who are listening, and with the camera I do the same thing. Like if I would be here just observing without camera, it's the same process, but with the camera. So it is possible to look away and come back to somebody, but it has to be in the context of the story. Maybe another action is important too, for the audience to participate, but the main action is still in the center. So I can look and come back, that is possible, but it's a decision that I'm making in this very moment, and if I make a wrong decision, it's tough. We are very much focused on our images and maybe on our story, and we tend to forget the sound. Normal hearing people, that we hear is very normal, right? If somebody talks that I hear him, that's normal. We don't really think about it much. We can close our eyes so we don't see anything anymore. We can't close our ears. We hear 24 hours a day. Sound is the part of the audiovisual product which is very, very much going into the subconscious part. We subconsciously can transform lots of information on the audio level. Like in the cinema, we were talking about music. Many people you don't really consciously hear the music in a feature film, for instance, but it subconsciously creates mood. We all know we can create mood if we put a very funny and light music under a horror scene. The whole horror is gone, and if we put a very dramatic music under a very happy and lively scene, it's not so happy anymore. The importance of sound in observational documentary is evident. And that means we have to think about what we do with the sound right from the beginning. As soon as we go out with the camera, filming anywhere, we have to think about the sound as well. The main instrument in the professional filmmaking, right from the beginning and still today, is the boom, the microphone on this stick. The reason why the boom is the main instrument and not these little microphones is actually very simple, because the boom can recreate the acoustic atmosphere much better to the image, right? The image and the acoustic impression must be the same If somebody is far away, I might still understand what he says, but there must be much more space in the sound than if he's right here. And if you have a microphone here, people are always acoustically in the front, wherever they are in the image. And that is strange. Our ears, especially our brain, is absolutely perfect. I can stand here, you can, people in the back there can talk quite silent, I can concentrate and I can understand. If I'm here with a microphone and somebody speaks over there, I will not hear, finally, I will not hear anything in the sound. Especially if there is lots of sound. I can sit in a restaurant where it's very noisy and I can talk to my friend who is sitting on the other side of the table and I understand. I get tired because it's tiring to concentrate in the noisy environment, but my brain is able to listen selectively. So I'm able to have a conversation, but the microphone can never listen selectively. Right? If I have a microphone here, I will have a noise, and I will not be able to understand the person talking. And many times people are surprised and say, I was filming, I heard what he was saying, and now on sound I don't hear him. I would like to show you how to use the boom. And to hold the boom, many people, they hold the boom like a fishing rod. Of course, that doesn't help much, because if you think your camera is here and you hold the boom like that, in the right-hand corner of the image, you always have this part of the boom looking in, which is not very nice. So the right way to hold the boom, as a matter of fact, is with your right hand, or if your left hand is here. A professional boom operator always has the boom like that, because then he knows where the end is here. He can move forward, he can move backwards, he can change. It happens automatically that the sound quality is always matching the image. If I have to go away with my microphone because the shot is wide, the acoustic impression is correct to the image. If he comes closer, I can come closer with the microphone, and the acoustic is again correct.
Starting, this is all the elements, more or less, that are in a finished documentary. You have the subject first. And then you have to choose your objective or your focus. And that leads you to the form. That leads you to the 5 possible or whatever forms I mentioned before. That's how it goes usually. At least very important for observational documentary about the use of natural lights. Original sound is very, very important, especially in observational documentary. Don't forget ambient sound, very, very important. Ambient sounds tell very much about the place where we film. The bird sounds different, a river in the background. You go to this place, you will be assigned, I think, not all the places, but some of them. And you don't start shooting right away. You meet the person or the family. You find out what is interesting about them. You can have the camera with you, maybe even try a little bit, just so that they get used to the camera, but you take your time. Then you retire and you talk to each other about the focus, and only then you start filming. It's a nice little story. Got a good feeling about the protagonists. I have no idea what they were talking about. I assume they are talking about their pigs and maybe
Feeding to the pig.
feeding, and but you realized a good feeling. You realized that I don't feel like an observer. They are just there. They talk to each other. And it's a round little... I'm not talking about the single cuts. Gabi will talk about that. I'm talking about the story as a whole. It was a little story, just from seeing it.
What you might have to think for a beginning, for a start, you see, if somebody walks away from me, it suggests to me he's leaving. A bit, right? It's not a big thing. But if you manage to have somebody, I don't know, maybe if we see him coming, it's better for me. I feel better. It's a better opening than if somebody walks away. As a cameraman, I always have to think of my dear friend in the editing room, right? And if I do something like this, he finishes the work and he moves away with his hands, that's fantastic. I just leave it a moment as it is, just a couple of, as long as possible, because that for Gabi would be the point where she can cut to a different scene.
Yeah.
If it's too short, if I stop or follow him again, then she has no chance to edit. I have to be brave enough as a cameraman to let people go out of the shot and wait a little moment before I continue again. If I'm close on these two hands and I think, well, I saw it, I shake back and make a long shot, and she knows immediately what the intention was, right? That this, I don't stop the camera, I keep the camera rolling for sound and for everything, but I just move back, make a long shot.
I also found it's a little bit problematic. First of all, there is a little pan that goes away of the guy. So I'm wondering what's coming, but then we go back. So this pan is not so... It's also a pan that is a pan and not a pan, because it's not clear what the camera really wants to focus on. I would not edit like this, because the problem is this the first shot, there is this little man totally on the right side of the image. And then from this long shot, that's a little bit difficult, because afterwards we have this extreme close-up of the feet. So it creates for me kind of a weird understanding of the space. Because sometimes it doesn't matter just the edit in the flowing. Sometimes also it matters the two shots to view in a graphical way. So the colors are important, what colors are here and what colors are there, how the composition of the image is in a graphical way. So this is also very important. So it could be a bit smoother having another size of the shot, or the first composition differently too, because this man is so on the right side, little, and then the feet are so permanent in the middle, so everything is a little bit jumpy. Sometimes there is this discussion between the director and the editor, and of course the director wants more succeed with his story, so she would fight for this shot, and I would fight for a nice editing. And then often it happens as an editor, you have to agree to the director, because it depends what kind of style you're doing of film, but it might be much more important to have the story, and in this moment happens something very important, and then you do it.
When a third person comes in with new eyes, who doesn't know the story before, sees different things, has a new opinion, is more professional also, of course, if this person is as professional as Gabi. So if you can edit with, especially for bigger pieces, of course, and real films, go for an experienced editor. He makes all the difference.
Going down, he's having angles like here from below, which makes things more visual, more interesting. There are lots of close-ups, we know where we are, and he does one very interesting thing. You know, before we were talking about having people going out of shot, hands out of shot. Here we have the other way around. He's coming in the shot, which always is, which as well is very important for editing. You know, it's the same thing like having people going out or having movements going out with movements coming in. Makes the editing more, the chance to have a more fluent editing is higher. There are certain things we call magic moments. That's a little magic moment, this little goat going to eat that's something that just happens and you got it. These little things make things more alive, that makes us having an experience that the audience lets me dive into the situation and live with it.
I don't think these two shots together are not quite working well for me. When I read the image, I'm not looking at this left side house.
The thing just is that this one attracts me very strongly because colors and bright parts attract my eye more than others. And if this would be a red house, I assume, it's theory, but I'm quite sure it would edit a bit better because it's red, I would go in. So if it's not the case, maybe if we would have another detail or maybe two more details before we come to this shot.
Then there is one cut that goes from a very brownish image to a totally green image. I would not edit like this because for me it's a question of color match. You can do this if you finish a scene and you open up a new other scene and it's a clear cut, we're somewhere else.
Long shots like this one, wide shots, they need, for the audience to see, I need more time than a specific close-up. There is so many elements that I have to see, and for that reason, for me, this is far too short.
I love the scene with the telephone. This guy is repairing, and you could have stayed longer with that because that really characterizes the person very much. You had difficulties because you were shooting with the DSLR, so we cannot expect better sound. Maybe that's where Stefan wants to go on.
It's a good idea. We were talking about active and passive camera movements, right? You use this character here as your pan trigger. You pan with him. But if you are telling me at the same time a moment with Jahir, I sort of think for a second, this must be Jahir. If you are panning with people, you're absolutely right to use elements in the image to trigger your pan. But of course, panning with somebody who is very like this, with this green yellow shirt, suddenly he is important because we're following him. So in a case like this, it could be appropriate to do an active camera movement without something triggering it. Because you say there is a road, and look, there is a shop. It's a bit confusing because I always try to follow an action. Somebody starts something working on the motorbike, and I never. There is no current story told. I'm jumping around in this workshop. Which is a bit difficult because the audience we always try to find a logic behind the things that we see. I have to stick a bit with an action and follow it through, and so that I have it afterwards. Maybe I say, now we are doing the scene searching for screws, screwing them into the motorbike.
Because mainly of three reasons, beside the protagonist, is respecting space, time and action. So it's for me hard to get a sense, and also a sense of space, because I hardly see the whole space.
The 3 W's, right? You don't always have to start with an establishing shot. That doesn't always have to be the first shot. I've seen this many times now, Of course, we have to know where we are, but I can start with a close shot of the motorbike being repaired, and later at the right moment, I see, this is the shot, right? Because it's actually more interesting to go into a story, not with an establishing shot, not with the wide shot, but with something that attracts my interest. For our camera friends, this is a typical backlight problem if the sun is shining onto the lens. Then these situations, like this, two people standing there looking at each other, that's exactly one of these situations where we as camera people are really, it's very demanding. Because I want to see this man as well, right? I always want, because if I to myself, always try to behave the way I would behave if I would stand there without a camera. If I am standing there as me, without a camera, I immediately, if one person says something, probably I look at the other person to see his reaction. I don't only stand there and look at the person who's talking for hours. I look around. Because if two people are in conversation, to have the impression of a conversation, I need to see them both. You actually move with your camera towards, but in your movement you zoom in. That's the only time you zoom.
As an editor, to make the rhythm flow better, I would cut to an emotion of the other guy. That could be sometimes between where the cameraman makes some close-ups of the other guy. Maybe it could be a smile, maybe it could be like this, agreeing that he understands what the guy, And then also from this nice scene where he's sitting and it's so peaceful, you cut into his walking. So it's very abrupt.
I think from a 3-minute piece on to a 2-hour-long documentary, it is the main dramaturgical pattern. You see, you have to have an introduction, then you go to orientation, then the development, that's the longest part. It reaches a climax or a culmination point. You have an exit. Don't go to the editing room, take this curve, and start counting. It's already good if you know more or less mathematics should be somewhere around here.
It tells us that the beginning here is crucial, right? It's the first 10 or 15 seconds that might decide if our audience wants to stay with us or not. So we have to give them a reason to stay with us. However we do that.
But the most important is to make the viewers curious.
At the same time, we have to be careful not to give away everything right at the beginning, trying to be so attractive that we sort of, give away everything here and we have nothing to... orientation and development means it's these things that people have to understand, to understand the story, for instance. Maybe there are things that are not very emotionally very attractive. And here, it's the biggest danger that we lose our audience. And then just as a final point of interest, the culmination point, actually, we all know it from feature films, it's the same thing as Mariana said, it's the Greek drama. The most important thing where everything for us leads up to is here, in the last third, and it is actually very close, golden section, picture composition. And it's the same point. This is a crucial thing.
Just one thing more to this in the solution. You decide this rule, and you design it when you are writing your script. When I'm doing an observational documentary, filming, be it half a day, or 3 weeks, or 2 months, I continuously think about dramaturgy. I don't do that only while editing. I saw it continuously. That's directing in an observational documentary. I think about the whole time. And when he's doing camera, he continuously thinks in the scene. Do I have a development? Do I have a beginning? Do I have an orientation? Do I have a climax? We're permanently thinking about that, but of course now it has gone from our cognitive side of the brain into this part of the brain. We do it more or less automatically. It's like bicycling.
Films have more than one exit. And this is also very delicate. Some shots, sometimes some shots that really indicate an ending. And if you use them, and then you start again to go back to the protagonist, it's kind of, it's not just confusing, it's boring. Because I think like, oh, now it's the end, oh, it's coming again. And then they think now it's the end, oh, it's coming again. So people lose patience.
Fisherman's face clearly because you have close up before. In the third scene, I don't really, I forgot what is the face of the wife. And
images of things close are very, very important. Never forget them. I looked around the corner a little bit, I saw some films you were looking at. To me, that I had the same impression, very beautiful pictures, but no close-ups. And close-ups are the essence, are the pepper in the soup of film. And just for the camera people, a little tip: if you have this situation, you already know, oh my God, this is going to be difficult. So do all the actions that you need, everything that you need, and in the end, when you have everything, when you say, well, we've got the story, then just go and hunt for close-ups. It might take an hour, I don't know, but just try, lay down and do whatever you can do. Hunt for close-ups of faces. After you did everything else, because then you're safe, you have your story, and now tell your director, I need half an hour, I have to try to get some close-ups.
We already talked about it, so the problem is that they don't have transitions between the stories. Now I suggest, because the fading into black is signalizing it's the end of the film for me, and then another story comes. That makes even the people feel more like, oh, it's not connected. So I suggest two options. Either we try to cut it, take out the black and try to see how this works, or you can look if you have some nice shots from the landscape where you maybe see, I don't know, to make a little transition.
As a whole, it was a very difficult assignment to tell the story. You are completely right. With very little commentary, we could tell the story because the visuals tell a big part of the story. You have the river first, then we see the bridge. You would say, once upon a time there was no bridge. Now there is one. And now you see all these people carrying these heavy loads, so we don't have to say much more, huh? We can imagine very easily how it must have been before, what they had to do to bring all these loads across the river. You might have shown a boat, if somebody was there with a boat, then we could have imagined even better. Then he tried to bring two people to talk about the bridge. They wouldn't really they would do it, but they were always talking to him. So I think you were quite desperate with the situation. You have a very magical moment, and you captured it very well.
Exactly.
Because that doesn't happen on this bridge all the time.
I think that the very moment is when she loses her baggage, and I think like afterwards there's so many more things coming, so there is somehow a bit imbalance, and then there are sometimes some long shots that, especially in the beginning, that don't match, so because I can see that totally other people are walking. Especially, I think it's the first cut also changes in terms of colors. It's very brownish colors, and before has that blue sky.
There are two ways of going about it. I'm repeating now something that we already said. Either I take my camera in my hand and I do close-ups, have things going out of image, do situations, do faces just in one go. Or I put my camera on a tripod, make a long shot, make a close shot, make a close shot of a face, make that, this is the other thing. That's the only way a filmic piece can be edited in the end. It's the same thing. Either I do it like this, in one go, or I cut. In the feature film, you cut. But this is sort of a middle thing between the feature film and the documentary. So you could have might as well did it in the camera already, so that the person who edits has the chance to make things shorter or to have actions quicker. So you don't have to produce jump cuts to make things shorter. A lot starts in the camera. I haven't seen the raw material, so I don't know where it all happened. But think of these things when you are shooting on location, to have possibilities to edit and to make things shorter. If somebody walks from here to here, it takes 10 minutes for him to walk over there. You know your film will only be 2 minutes, so it doesn't make sense to fake this. Otherwise, the editor decides to produce a jump cut that will kick her out of the door. So you have to think about something, how to do it, that we can shorten this action afterwards.
घर बस्ने अब अहिले अब खै अब ए लाला यो ज्याकेट राख्दे बोर्डमा त ज्यादै.
What I very much like is the patience of the camera, right? This camera person has learned a lot. I think, like situations like this here, where he don't have to do much because it shows such a lot the way he asks and the woman comes and takes. We are just watching. Very well done. And you wait till he is gone, right? Which gives us the possibility to let him come in. Very nice shot. And we don't pan with him. We let him go out.